All right, everybody, welcome back to Getting Technical with Dan Gillespie and myself, Mason Day, here at JR Peters. And this week, we are talking nutrients and media. What are you growing things in? Because we get a lot of questions about, somebody's growing in X or they're growing in clay, and what do the nutrition schedules change? So we want to break it down in a video and kind of give you the run through on things. So we're here this week, and so let's get rolling. So Dan, if I am using Jack's nutrients and I'm taking a look at the grow schedules, which are available on the website at jacksnutrients.com/grow schedules, does it matter what I'm growing in on a general level?
Generally, Mason, the nutrition schedules available online are going to be a great place to start, regardless of the soilless media, the soil, or the hydroponic system that may be being used. Now, that being said, every situation is going to be a little bit different. Every soil and every soilless media is going to have different physical and chemical properties. So these types of things need to be accounted for and need to be managed a little bit differently. But starting with our grow schedules is going to be a great place to start. From there, you can kind of read your plants and make your adjustments as needed.
All right. So if I'm growing indoors, it doesn't matter, not that it doesn't matter, it's personal preference, but it doesn't matter necessarily or affect the nutrition schedule or nutrition plan if I'm growing, in an RW or RDWC system versus if I'm growing in some sort of soilless media.
Generally, it's not, Mason, but again, it can depend, and I know that answer can be a little bit frustrating, but it does. So, and by RWDC, DWC, you're referring to the classic liquid culture hydroponic systems where the roots are going to be growing directly into the nutrient solution. So we do get a lot of growers who may express some concern about using the recommended full strength rates, especially in these liquid culture hydroponic system where the roots are going to be growing into that nutrient solution, which is understandable. It makes sense, But in reality, the rates outlined on the nutrition schedules really aren't too high, Mason. They're, the highest level is going to be about 200 parts per million nitrogen. And even that rate it's really designed to provide a consistent, balanced nutrient supply at a low rate, but on a continuous basis. So now it's important to ensure that our components of the nutrient solution, especially our pH, are within that target range of 5.8 to 6. Because as we start to move outside of this range, that's when we'll start to see the toxicities or deficiencies begin to occur. But at the recommended rates, if being managed correctly, you should be fine. Again, adjustments are going to be needed, and it is going to depend on the specific situation.
And that goes with any system. Like any system, is going to need an adjustment of some sort just because, it could, I don't even know, maybe altitude has a factor. You never know with some of these things where you're going to have to tweak something slightly. And that's the beauty of Jax is that, we want you to be the scientist and make the adjustments as you need. And with a, whether it's a 2-part or a 3-part system that you're using from Jax, you can start to change it up a little bit. And it's also, I like that you brought up the fact that, the feeding at full strength. We have a lot of folks that are like, should I be feeding at full strength? Seems like a lot. But realistically, when you break it down, it's not a lot. And you're not risking any sort of burn if you're just looking at, the feeding rate. But that's where, pH is something that's important to make sure you're not seeing a deficiency or a toxicity. So good stuff, Dan. So, okay. So that kind of covers the RDWC, traditional hydroponics and soilless media. But does it depend on, what about cocoa versus a media? Something that's a media mix that's kind of manufactured, or a lot of people are using Coco Coir. What do you think?
Yeah. So again, Mason, our nutrition schedules are going to be a great starting point for these medias as well. Again, we do need to consider the physical and chemical characteristics of these soilless grow medias, such as porosity, water holding capacity, starting pH, all those types of things, because that's going to affect how we manage the media, how frequently we need to water or feed the media. So those do need to be accounted for. Oftentimes, growers may ask the question if we need additional calcium and magnesium for cocoa. Now, this may be the case for unbuffered cocoa, but most cocoa that horticultural growers are using should be buffered, meaning that it has been rinsed and leached to leach out all of the excess sodium, chloride, and potassium that is naturally occurring in cocoa. So since most growers are using this buffered cocoa, or they should be ideally, Jack's nutrients are going to be formulated to provide ample amounts of nutrients, including calcium and magnesium, even for media such as Coco Coir. Now, again, it is going to depend, and every situation's a little bit different. So we need to make adjustments based on our plant's responses. So for instance, if we're learning or we're seeing that our plant needs a little bit more calcium, we can increase the rate of our Part B. Or if we need a little bit more magnesium, we can increase the rate of our Epsom salt.
All right, that makes sense as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm a Miller Lite guy. Some people are Bud Light people. Same thing goes for media mixes. You've got a lot of different brands out there. Does it really matter which brand as far as, from the things you've seen?
Mason, as long as you're buying from a reputable company, it should not matter. Jack's is certainly going to work in any type of grow media. A lot of these soilless grow medias and hydroponics, Mason, the grow media is not really providing much nutritional value to the plant. It's more so just an anchor for the roots. So Jack's nutrients are going to work across a variety of different brands, grow medias, and varieties. You just want to ensure that it is a reputable company that you're working with.
And that's important too, is that, when you think about a grow media, they're not there to offer the nutrients. That's what you're using a nutrient for, but it's more so for things like, getting the desired porosity, or if it's,
Exactly.
because some have different levels of perlite, some have different levels of, other things. I've even seen some with, some, microbe in it, but it's not for the nutrients. It's more personal preference of other things that you're looking for.
Sure.
So, cool. So Dan, what about now? We mainly focused on indoor growing. What if I'm growing outside, but I'm still using a soilless media, something out of a bag?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mason. If you're growing outside in a soilless media, again, you're still going to be getting most of your nutrients from the nutrient solution. That soilless media is not going to provide a ton of nutrients unless it's some type of living soil or something like that. But if you're in containers in a soilless media, you're probably not getting a whole lot of nutrients there. So it's fairly similar. Now, the way you manage it's going to be a little bit different, right? Because you may have some rainfall and things like that. So it almost becomes similar to outdoor mum production at that point.
All right. Now, so that's if I'm outside in, a glorified container, even if it's, a large bag.
Sure.
But how does that change if I'm, planting things straight in the ground? Say I'm field growing, a large, maybe it's a hemp crop, maybe it's a cannabis crop in some of those areas where you can do that, but a field grown crop, maybe in the ground or clay.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Mason. So if we're growing in the actual earth, soil, or even some type of living soil, right? These types of soils are going to provide some level of nutrients, and they're really going to aid in nutrient cycling as well. So in these cases, it is helpful to know this information by getting the soil analyzed. So seeing what the nutrient profile like in that type of soil is. Because oftentimes crops grown in these types of soils, they may not need a calcium containing fertilizer, or they may need an acidic fertilizer. And in those types of cases, something like a Jack's 18823 is going to be a great fit when you're growing in an earth soil or a living soil where calcium isn't needed.
So why is that, Dan?
So Mason, there's a lot of times in these living soils and just earth soil, it has a nutrient profile, right? After years and years, it builds up a nutrient profile and a nutrient reserve for that plant to pull from. So as opposed to the soilless grow media, where the media is just essentially acting as an anchor, not really providing much nutritional value, something like a living soil or in the earth soil, you're going to have some nutrient profile, some nutrient concentration there. So it's just different fertilizer formulas for different scenarios and different needs.
All right, and we do lab testing at our J.R. Peters laboratory. Now we test for media, but not for field soil, correct?
We test for soilless grow media, Mason, and we use a saturated paste extract for that. And this is a great analysis for soilless grow media because it gives us an actual snapshot of what currently at this time is available to the plant in the media, which a pour-through analysis or a complete analysis does lack.
All right. Well, hey, Dan, that kind of answers a lot of the questions. When you think about it, is there a specific system that you'd recommend?
Mason, it comes back to, again, what works for you. It's going to be different in everyone's situation. So the key is really, it's not a one size all fits thing. There's no one best way to do it. But it's just finding what works for you, both logistically and preference, and putting all that together to find your best system.
All right. Well, hey, Dan, I just want to say thank you for bringing all the knowledge today. Great talking to you about, media and figuring out what kinds of things actually affect what you should be doing from a nutrition schedule standpoint when it comes to media. Some of those crazy folks out there that are growing, in the ground and clay and have the ability to do so and how that affects things. So this is great. And, as always, you can find the rest of our Getting Technical series on our Jack's Nutrients website, and that's jacksnutrients.com. And yeah, so if you guys have any other questions, leave them in a comment or let us know via Instagram, and we'll be back again next week. So thank you guys. And Dan, any last words?
That's it, Mason. Thank you.
All right, take it easy, you guys. See you next week.
See you guys.